Today, we're going to delve into what we know about this suspect and analyze behavior leading up to and surrounding the murders. Now, to help me is Joseph Scott Morgan, distinguished scholar of forensics at Jacksonville State University and host of podcast Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Now, Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI special agent, Navy SEAL, Caitlyn Becker, senior reporter from dailymail.com, and Mercedes Colwin, trial attorney and national legal analyst. So thank you all for being here. We've talked about this before, and I really want to delve into it. I want to start by acknowledging the accuracy of what we discussed and talked about before, because predictions here really were pretty darn spot on about what we talked about before. Our experts mentioned the suspect would live close by, and Bryan Kohberger actually lives 8.4 miles from the victim's house in Moscow, Idaho. They described the murderer as someone with narcissistic tendencies, most likely young and a college student. He is 28 and a student at Washington State University who was bullied in high school, an obsessive vegan and many have described him as a know-it-all, very narcissistic in his mindset. We said whoever did this would most likely appear back at the crime scene, and his phone pinged at 9:12 a.m., just hours after the murders, right back in front of the house. We also said DNA would very likely trace this suspect because you can't do what was done and not have some DNA, contact, sweat, blood, whatever. And the FBI were able to match his DNA to the knife sheath left at the crime scene. We talked about how the suspect would have very likely left town, and he in fact drove cross country with his father to Pennsylvania a few weeks later when there was kind of this mass exodus from the town as people were wanting to get away. So now that the arrest has been made and we've learned more, what's the most significant thing that's jumped out at you as you've learned more about this?
Well, for me, Dr. Phil, I think when the affidavit came out, I was absolutely shocked with how rich in information it was. We don't normally see something like this, and particularly as it went to DNA. They talk about the button clip that's on this sheath that was left behind, that was found obviously in the bed adjacent to the victims. And that's probably going to arise, that identification is going to arise from what's referred to as touch DNA.
Now, this is very much like what was found there.
Right.
And the button that we're talking about is this one right here.
Yes, it is.
Which you have to, snap and get out. And contact DNA was found on this button right here.
Yeah, and so what you're looking at, just think about, okay, let me kind of break this down. You're talking about touch DNA, which for all of us, if you have dry skin, you slough dead skin cells all of the time. And so in this particular case, he would have left potentially several elements that they could identify there, these dead skin cells. And you only find a partial strand of DNA in that. But they did find something there that tied directly back to him. And the fact that it was in such close proximity to the bodies might even be an indication as a starting point to when all of this happened. And so this is very powerful information, and it's not necessary that we have the knife at this point, because the knife actually could leave behind more evidence. One of the things that we do at autopsy, at examination, is we do full body x-rays. Okay, just let that sink in just for a second. We do full body x-rays. So this knife, allegedly, has been used repeatedly, 4 times. Okay, let's just think about that. The structural integrity of this thing begins to wear down. It'll chip. Sometimes points break off. I've seen this any number of times at autopsy. If that is the case, they may very well have recovered a metal fragment from the blade of that knife within the body. And if that is the case as well, you can do metallurgical analysis on that. And the reason that's important is you can tie it back to a specific manufacturer. Just because the sheath was found there doesn't mean that that's the knife that was carried.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.